And welcome back to centralcoastradio.com. Well, because we're taking a look at the brand new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film, we thought let's go back in time a little bit and let's get each one of us on the panel here to talk about what was their favorite cartoon when they were a kid. Because for a lot of people, it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, especially in our generation and for the generations that followed. Yeah, let's jump in our time travel machine and go back and take a look at what our favorite cartoon was as a kid. Harley, what was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Well, see, this is the dangerous part because, I could speak for the next 3 hours on cartoons I love and still love today. Yeah, I think we were so spoilt in the 80s. There were just so many good things coming out. But I guess there's an issue there as well that the sort of laws in the United States regarding what could be shown to kids and if it related to a toy franchise, they had a lot more rights to do that. There used to be a lot more restrictions. So suddenly we had all these toys that we grew up with, and there was a cartoon to go with it. So we were really quite spoiled. So I was very much a child of toys and cartoons. So for me, Transformers had always been a huge one. I just loved that concept. I thought the idea of them were ingenious and the story they put together was brilliant. Um, as for like sort of top of the line cartoons though, Filmation's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and the She-Ra Princess of Power cartoons, I think are still some of the best animations I've seen today. Um, yeah, just their style, their production value, not much lives up to that anymore. But there are a few other real standouts. Like for me, I always loved Japanese animation, so I'm sure we're all watching like Astro Boy and things like that. But for me, the series Robotech, which was originally three different
Mm.
Japanese cartoon series, but an American company put them all together as one multi-generational story under the banner Robotech. And that to me was sort of like the highlight of um, storytelling as a kid because it wasn't so much dumbed down or speaking down to you as a lot of cartoons would do. Like I always felt that was a bit of a letdown for me. I didn't like things speaking down to me. So when we had this Robotech storyline, because it was Japanese produced, it wasn't strictly made for kids. It was quite a mature storyline. So that I really loved, and I still love it to this day. Anytime there's a spin-off of either the original Japanese cartoons or Robotech itself, I'm always there on board with that. Um, I mean, growing up, I still watch cartoons now, and I have to give a shout out a few years back. What was it, like 10, 20 years ago? I can't even remember now. I'm so ingrained in these things. But there was a series called The Fairly Odd Parents. I don't know if anyone watched that. It was like these fairy godparents with this kid, and uh, just the humor was sometimes quite adult, but it was a kid's cartoon. I think they just knew that there were adults in the background, so they could put these extra jokes in. I thought that was just kind of brilliant. But yeah, other than that, there's always the usual things you grow up with, kind of the different Ghostbusters and things like that. Um, and I feel weird saying this, but a few years back they had that reboot of the My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. I think that series, I don't know what it is. There's something so endearing about that series. I didn't like the 80s one at all. I tried to watch it and it was awful. But that Friendship is Magic series, for some reason, this everyone loves it, and it just relaunched their kind of whole My Little Pony toy line and everything. So
Mm.
yeah, I think a lot of people have a special place for that one. But yeah, those will be my top picks. Although there's like 500 more I can mention, but I'll let someone else speak.
Kyle, what was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Um, is I had so many as well. Many of them that Harley mentioned. Yeah, the Transformers, Robotech. So many of them that were based on toys, and that's something that I didn't actually realize until a lot more recently. It's like, yeah, wait, all these shows were just made to sell toys. I didn't even I didn't even know that when I was younger. I was like, I guess I just fell straight into it. But now I can't deny like my favorite show for the longest time throughout my childhood was actually Garfield and Friends.
Mhm.
Um
Um,
and it
Yeah.
wasn't it
Oh
and then
my
that
God,
one
I still get the theme tune in my head for
yeah.
that. It just goes over and over.
Which one? Because they had so many different versions of the theme tune. So, I mean, yeah, I remember I got the I rented a VHS of it like when I was really young from a movie land, and it had the first three like specials. It started off as 11 different like half-hour specials that started in the very early 80s up until I think they went until 1991, but and they're like half hour, just single half-hour stories. Like Here Comes Garfield, Garfield in Paradise, Garfield and His Nine Lives, and different ones that were really based on ones that were based on the entire like books that Jim Davis, the creator of Garfield, had written, like the Garfield and His Nine Lives, and Babes and Bullets was kind of a parody of film noir murder story. It's a kid's cartoon, and it's a story about him solving a murder. It's like it was crazy, but that was just those specials. The actual TV show uh Garfield and Friends started in 1988, and that was it's a pity that it wasn't like a full half-hour story every episode. What it was three shorts. The first and the third one in every episode was a Garfield story, and the middle one was one based off another series that Jim Davis had created called US Acres, and I always skipped that one. That was something I actually I when it was on TV and when I was going to school, I would actually get my mum to, because it was on TV when I was actually at school. I had to go catch the bus to school. And so I would actually get my mum to record the first episode, then skip the second episode. The US Acres, Orson's farm or whatever, was about this pig on a farm and the crazy antics that they get on up to, and then start recording the third episode again because I only cared about the Garfield segments. I only cared about yeah, Garfield and Friends and just his story. And I don't know, I thought it was very, very, very different to any, like, really many other cartoon shows at the time. Now there's a lot more meta humor and self-referential humor in kids' cartoons because I think they know that they're making for adults as well. But back then they didn't really have much of it, but this show did. There's constant references from characters talking about wanting to have a bigger part in the TV show, or they're talking about their contracts or stuff like that. And it was just, I don't know, it was something that was very different to other cartoon shows. And the fact that Garfield, I mean, and like everybody knows the character of Garfield, he can be just such an unlikable person, and that was something I thought was, I don't know, I thought that was endearing about him as well. And just like, I don't know, maybe that's where I got my maybe that's why I was kind of a chubby kid when I was growing up and had a fondness for lasagna myself. But yeah, I think that was probably my favorite show. It was one, yeah, it's a pity that it kind of canceled. The guy who did it's come back in different forms, but I don't know. The guy who did the voice for Garfield, called Lorenzo Music. He also did the voice of Ray in the Ghostbusters TV series, and it's funny because it's the exact same voice in both cartoons when you watch them now. But yeah, he died,
But now
unfortunately.
you've said that, I can absolutely hear it. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it is. It's exactly the same voice when you watch it. I think he actually got booted off of I think he got booted off of the Ghostbusters series because oh, was it Ray or Venkman? I think he was doing the voice of Venkman, not Ray. But yeah, because I think Bill Murray didn't. There was something. It was this weird thing. Yeah, he did the voice of Bill Murray's character in Ghostbusters, the TV series, and then Bill Murray did the voice of Garfield, kind of took over from him in the two animated Garfield movies that they made. So it was kind of like this weird full circle kind of thing. But I don't know. I none of the other there's been other animated series based on Garfield. There's been the two live action movies, but none of them have really entertained me as much as that as like even as a diehard fan of the character and of the cartoon show, none of them have really kept me entertained in the same way. So I don't know. It's kind of it really is kind of this time capsule from my past that there's no way that they can do a reboot of it that would satisfy me. So yeah, that would be my favorite one. Definitely one that that I was a fan of up into high school, I think.
And Lee, what's your favorite cartoon as a kid?
All right. Well, first, I just want to give a quick shout out to Muppet Babies, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
That
I
song's
had the
in my
McDonald's
head. That
toys.
song will be in
Yeah.
my head all day. And I still remember all the words, by the way. Mickey Mouse, Roadrunner, Bugs Bunny, Put Rock Flats, all because my family used to watch it all together. All these things that just bring a lot of memories back.
You know, I heard a stat or a fact recently that ruined Roadrunner for me forever. Did you know that a coyote in real life can actually outrun a Roadrunner?
Not in the show, Dave. But I want to get on to my all-time favorite, which you guys may not have even heard of before. Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's actually a manga. It's an anime series called Candy Candy. Has anyone heard of that before?
No,
No.
I've never heard of that one.
I know the name, but I can't picture it.
I am also the oldest of all of you here, so it might be that it was a little bit before your time. So it was actually released in 1975. It's a Japanese anime. However, when I watched it, I saw it in English. It is actually based in America, the animation. So I have since tracked it down because we had the DVD of it and I used to watch it over and over and over. But somehow, I don't know if one of my sisters got it or if my parents threw it out, which I hope they did not. If I find out that, I will not be happy. But I've not found it as an adult amongst our stuff. So well, actually, it was a video back then, I have to say. And so that was in English. But I've since hunted down a version. It is actually in Japanese with subtitles. So it sounds very different because of what I grew up with, because I used to know the words back to front. I could say it with it as it was playing. Now, this anime is about a girl called Candy who is abandoned and left in an orphanage. Actually, she's left on the front steps of an orphanage as a baby. And you see her years in the orphanage, and then you see her life go through finally, she's finally got a placement, a potential carer, a foster carer, or someone that will adopt her, and tragedy happens, and then she doesn't get to go and live with that person, and her life becomes very hard because as you get older, you don't really get adopted unless you're expected to help or work or whatever on someone's property or in their home. So you see all the struggles, and you see how hard it can be for a kid that's landed in foster care. And she also has a best friend called Annie, and they end up having completely separate lives, but those initial years of friendship are really strong, and all the kids in the orphanage have strong friendships as well. But yeah, you do see her as she grows up just going through a lot of different things, whether it's working, facing real challenges with foster families that treat her really badly. But then she's got some joys in life as well, and she makes some extraordinary friends as she moves on and does nursing and things like that as well. I guess it's the first thing that introduced me to the fact that not all kids can live with their parents. And so at a very early age, I learnt about kids in care. And part of the reason I think that I ended up working with kids in care was because of this animation. So it'll always be like something held in my heart. And yes, I will be watching the whole series again at some stage. It is very kiddie. I mean, it is a 1975 series. It went for 4 years, I believe. And yeah, it might seem a little bit cheesy now, but it was really great series.
Awesome.
I like that actually. I think I'm gonna check that one out. I just looked it up while you were talking about it, and the image of it is very familiar. So
Yeah.
I think I've either seen it or I've seen it around somewhere. So I'll keep an eye out for you if I find a
always
copy of the American.
wondered, I don't know for sure, but I've always wondered if Sailor Moon has anything to do with the original Candy. I do not know. I'm not saying the same storyline, but I don't know. The character reminds me so much of this character. And
Leah was watching it one day, and I thought it was an episode of Sailor Moon that she was watching.
Yeah. So it probably is not. It probably just looks similar, but I've always wondered, does it have anything to do with the other? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And you've actually just reminded me. There was a series, I don't know if you guys remember it, Belle and Sebastian.
Yes.
It was
yes.
that during the war years in France. I loved that so much.
Which they've now made into movies with real
there's
humans.
2 live action movies, which I bought as soon as I found them. I was like, what? It was so exciting for me. Like I just regressed to 5 years old. It was brilliant.
Now I was like Kyle and Harley. I was a very big animation fan when I was a kid. I used to love watching things like Roger Ramjet, Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe. There was a bit of a toss-up between which one was going to be my favorite of when I was a kid. I used to love Kimber the White Lion. That was
I have that series.
Yeah,
the whole series.
But
yes, I loved that so much.
But my favorite when I was growing up was definitely Defenders of the Earth. I absolutely loved that series to the point when DVDs first became a thing, I was waiting for them to actually bring out the entire series, which I was finally able to get. But for those that don't remember it, Defenders of the Earth was actually pretty interesting because it was Flash Gordon, his son Rick. There was the Phantom and his daughter Jeddah. There was Mandrake the Magician. I'm trying to think who else. Lothar. There was just so many different characters, and I was already a fan of the Phantom because my dad had given me a lot of his Phantom comics. So when Defenders of the Earth first started in Australia, I was addicted to it. It used to be part of Agro's Cartoon Connection here, and I remember that at one point they moved it to a time that almost used to make me late for primary school every day, but I refused to leave the house until it had finished. So but yeah, I went back and watched it recently, and it still works. Like it has a real environmental theme to a lot of it, so that works. There is a little bit of an issue with the way that Lothar is referred to sometimes in it, but yeah, the rest of it still holds up and still works pretty well. So yeah, if you ever want to relive your childhood days, go back and check out Defenders of the Earth. But yeah, that is it for our wrap up of our favorite cartoons. I should ask though, seeing we're talking about Turtles today, you guys all watched Turtles when you were growing up too, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Jumped onto that right away. I remember exactly. Actually, we had moved out to the country, so we had like limited television channels. I think we only had like 2 channels. But we did get this big antenna installed that when we flick a switch, we can watch all the city-based television channels.
Yep.
So I remember my sort of best friend at school at the time had gone to the city for a day or two, and when he came back, he's like, "There's this new cartoon on like Channel 7. You've got to watch it. You'll be so into it." So immediately, I went home after school, flicked the switch to the city channels, and saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and never stopped watching it.
I was actually banned from watching one animation when I was a kid, because I inadvertently wrecked my mom and dad's clothesline after watching it. Inspector Gadget. Apparently after watching an episode one day, I went out into the backyard and stood underneath the clothesline and started spinning it around really fast, like Inspector Gadget's gadget copter. And it broke it and it fell over. And so I got banned from watching Inspector Gadget. So this is how sad I am. As a teenager, I went and bought all of the series of Inspector Gadget because I wanted to finally be allowed to watch it again. So
that always had a special place in my heart as well. Like, because Don Adams, famous for being Max
Get
Smart,
Smart,
in
yeah.
Get Smart, you know, you can't like not recognize that voice. So it was amazing to me to be like, oh, that guy is this guy's voice. Like, it was two things I loved. I always loved those old shows and things. So yeah, that was very special to me when I was a kid.
Awesome. Well, that is our wrap up of our favorite cartoons when we were kids. We'll be back in just a moment on centralcoastradio.com.